Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts. I was trying to see where I'm supposed to look. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media, based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday, the 15th of September, 2024. And before we get to today's hangout session, I would like to thank my last live stream guest, which is the Soap Girls, Millie and me. It was great to catch up with them after a little over 3.5 years of break since our last set of live streams that we had done. So it's always great catching up with them and seeing what they've been up to. I had a really interesting thing that happened with my Twitch account based on their live stream, which it actually kind of pisses me off, to be honest. But anyway, they've been dealing with all kinds of issues, and then their issue kind of became my issue. But I'm all back the way I'm supposed to be. So, all is good. And if you'd like to know what I have coming up, please follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If this is your first time joining me on my YouTube channel, if you could do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. If you put a thumbs up, if you put a comment in there, any kind of interaction really helps, but it's definitely the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're over on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there, since I'm kind of starting anew with Twitch, that would be great. That's where I first started all of these live streams back in May of 2020 on the Alice live stream tour, the Inside Out live stream tour. So I always try to maintain a presence on Twitch as long as they want to have me there. And if you're really feeling that you want to support the channel, what I use for my streaming services costs me money every month, and it just doubled. So if you would like to help keep this running, there's a PayPal me link and a Venmo as well. In every YouTube description, you can just expand that description, and you'll see those links down there on the bottom. But that's only if you're in a position to do so. I love doing these. I'm getting pulled in all kinds of different directions, especially with a lot of in-person events that I've been covering. I'm back doing all kinds of film things, which I've kind of taken a break from. But I've said this before, if I could do live stream interviews every week, I would do them. It's just kind of a matter of trying to fit things in, finding some balance in my own life. So, but I love doing these. This is the second one for 2024. I hope to at least get a third one before the year is out, maybe a fourth one. Again, we'll kind of see how this whole schedule thing kind of works. If you're new to this, what this is at the end of July of 2020, I had 3 guests that I'd interviewed before come together. They'd never met each other. And at that time, I had taken some random questions from the internet. I just posed it to the group, and we just kind of riffed off of that, basically. Eventually, just turned into, we didn't need the questions. It just became putting 3 or sometimes 4 or even 5 people together, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze, basically. Of course, it was a different time, being the pandemic, so people didn't have anything to do, couldn't go anywhere or anything else like that. So we're typically drinking during those sessions, very much a happy hour. I had really, really good memories of a lot of those, if not almost all of them. So it was a good time. And I wanted to continue this on once we got past the pandemic. And so every year I still had some. 2022, I think I only had 1, but I still managed to get it in there. And so, again, I love doing this. Sometimes I'll have a veteran that's done some, and I'll have some guests that are brand new to this concept. And so if you're watching this and you have comments for anyone in the group, including me, just put them into the YouTube channel or the Twitch channel, and then I'll ask them to the group so they can kind of do whatever they want with that particular question. And if you're just working around the house on a Sunday or something like that, and you just have the audio going, I understand a lot of people like to do that just so they're kind of listening while they're doing what they do. Anything's cool. So I just appreciate you being here and taking the time. So unlike my one-on-one interviews where I have a written out intro, with the fun table sessions, I will just say something off the top of my head for each guest, and we'll bring them in until we have all of us together. So let's see here. Let's go back to July, which was only 2 months ago. And this guest was a wonderful guest from last year. We did 2 interviews, and then we did one July of this year. And he's really talented as a musician, as an animator. We have a lot of things in common. We have the band Alice in common. That's how we got connected. And so it kind of shows that the whole thing of sometimes it's who you know. Well, I didn't know this person, and luckily he knew Alice and I knew Alice, so that's how we got together. And since then, we've been doing live streams, and I did a voiceover for one of his, actually the latest episode of his animated series, which I'm sure he can speak to. So let's bring in Mr. Mike Evans.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, it's as I was saying before we got on stream, my wife and I have been binging Lost on Netflix. So yeah, we've been enjoying bit of the mystique of that.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's so interesting for me being the age that I am that, of course, I remember when you couldn't binge anything, and such a different
Yeah.
experience between, one episode per week and then just sitting there and watching all 10 or, 20 or whatever it is, over the course of a couple days. There's pros and cons to both to me.
Yeah, there's such a culture now. I think even with the stuff I do in my series, there's a big binge culture to things now, and people are very impatient, myself included. It's funny how just a few years ago we had to wait like a week or months at a time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and that's kind of like as soon as I do this fun table, people might message me, Mark, when are you doing the next one? It's like we just did one. So I mean, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but it's like, give me some time. It takes work to do this stuff, as you know, doing with your animated series. You can't just bang one out and then there's another one the next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. And let's see, our next guest, let's bring in from November of last year. She and her bandmate came on and we talked about their band. And she also has another band she's a part of. So let's bring in Sarah Campbell.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Good. Nice to see you, Mark. Nice to meet you, Michael.
Hey, Sarah, great to meet you too. Your band sounds fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I know a lot of similarities with what you tend to work on. I've done some research, so collaborations for sure. And you're talking about binge watching, so I'm super late to the party, but I just started Game of Thrones, which is incredible. I made it through season 1. I was like, let me see how this goes, and then I was like, oh, I'm hooked now. So definitely binged some of that last night while relaxing in my hotel room.
Don't get too attached to any of the characters.
No kidding. I've already learned that. Like I'm screaming out loud in my home. Like, wait, what? So yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I'm just scratching the surface.
Awesome.
That's cool. I'm one of those people like you, sir. I've only seen like one episode of that series. So and everybody kept talking to me about, Mark, you gotta watch this.
Yeah.
And so I don't have anything against it. Just I don't know. I just haven't found the mood to start sitting there because I know once I do, it's going to be just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there.
I think for me, it was thinking ahead. Like we're starting to get into those colder, darker months in Seattle. No, it's going to happen soon. So I'm like, let me get into a really good show. So with the little free time that I have, I'll catch an episode or two at night just to relax, right? Relax watching, people getting torn to pieces.
Yeah, that sounds just like how I think. I'm always that's relaxing to me.
People getting torn to pieces, or
yeah, that says a lot about me, I guess.
Same.
All right, and let's absolutely last but not least, the veteran of this fun table, she's done at least 3-4 of them in 2020 and 2021. I'm flashbacking to some of the discussions we had back then that were really a lot of fun. Again, they were very off the cuff and people were drinking and just kind of, that kind of thing happening. But she's also someone that I've done one-on-one interviews since I first met her in 2020. And she's got a lot of different things going on with her podcast and her band that she was touring with and her own music and her husband's studio and what she does for her Muggle work. So let's bring in Leah Ingram. Hi, Leah.
Ready?
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting in my Squishmallow pile right now. I'm just surrounded by pillows and I'm super cozy. And I think to keep with the theme of like what we're watching right now, I, as a teenager, used to love the show Degrassi, and my husband and I actually are binging that at the moment. So not sure if you guys have heard of that, but it was something I watched a lot as a teenager. He watched a lot as a teenager, and we just recently kind of rediscovered. So that's been our nightly binge.
Is that the one was Drake in that?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Yep.
Yes. So that was, like 2000s was when it was like, really, really big. I think it might still be going. I actually am not 100% sure, but I guess I'll find out soon.
Yeah.
might need to clue me in on that one. I haven't heard of it.
Oh, really? Okay. It's Canadian. Yeah. So Aubrey Graham, which is Drake's, like proper name, I think that's like where he got his start. So I think that's kind of what people know it as.
Okay. I'll have to look into it. I'm like Michael. I am not familiar with that show at all.
That one may have went past me when at that era, but
Yeah, it was very kind of like it was sort of random. It might have been on like Nickelodeon or something. I can never remember where I found it, but
I think that's where it was from. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. My friends and I used to watch it every week. A new episode would come out, and you had like what you guys were saying earlier about like you had to wait for episodes to come out. Very drama, so it was always hard to wait for. And now it's great that like looking back and thinking about having to wait for those episodes, and now I can just like skip to the next one, skip the theme song, and just skip to it.
It's dangerous though, because you're like 3 hours in, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 1 a.m, and Michael, it's 1 in the afternoon for you.
Do you remember back in the day, though, when you couldn't watch it, you couldn't binge it? After a week goes by, sometimes you forget the whole story. You forget what's going on.
Yeah, that's true with a lot of these series now, especially like when they reboot or come up the reboot of Dexter, or I got into Peaky Blinders, and then there was so much time in between, and you're trying to catch up with the character, and you're 5 seasons deep, and the complexity of the stories, it's just, whew, you got to go back and rewatch some of those to catch yourself back up again.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the pluses, is that you have the ability to go back. Back in the day, if you missed something or missed a detail, you wanted to see a scene again, like you had to wait for the rerun to show up, 3 months later or whatever.
Reruns, oh boy.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely the younger generation wouldn't have a clue. What are you talking about? I can just have it, it's at my fingertips, Mark. I can watch any episode whenever I want. I can watch it 10 times if I want to. It was like,
exactly.
Yeah, I didn't have that luxury in the 70s and 80s or 90s or that stuff. And I'm thinking about when, Leah, you mentioned Nickelodeon for that show.
Oh yeah.
The brief time when I worked as an audio engineer, we did a piece for, it was like this contest that kids could vote on of how they wanted this animated like half-hour show to look, and they got to vote on the type of music, the type of characters, all this kind of stuff. And they picked like a rock intro, and since I was the audio person, I had to come up with this like 10-second rock loop.
Oh my God, amazing.
For Nickelodeon. So anytime I think of Nickelodeon, that's what I think of, because I was racking my brain trying to come up with stuff. We kept sending it to the Nickelodeon reps, and they're like, it's good, but it's not great. And so I was like, oh.
What was the show called?
You know what? And for the life of me, I don't remember the name of the show or even the characters. I just remember sitting in that audio booth that I was in, just going nuts, especially as the deadline was getting close, and we kept sending files to them, and they kept sending them back. And I'm like, oh gosh. We eventually got something that they liked, and it seemed like the kids, when they got feedback from them, for the most part, that's what they had in their head of what they wanted to hear from this thing. But because the idea at the time sounded awesome. It's like, oh, we're going to kind of create something that the kids vote on and all that kind of thing. That's the animators and the programmers and stuff in our building wanted to do. And then as we start getting into it, it became, oh man, this is a nightmare because they're not happy with any of it. But we got there. We eventually got there. So
how did they vote? Was it like phoning in, or like on the internet, or?
If I remember right, it was an internet thing that they're voting through Nickelodeon's site, and then that information was getting stuck over to us, because they could, like, for my piece, it was like rock and roll, country, rap, some other types of genres that they could pick from, and rock was clearly the winner that they wanted. So then the pressure was on me to come up with something.
Oh.
So, but yeah, that was ages ago. We're talking like over 20 years ago for me. 2000-ish was when we did that whole thing.
I think all of us on the call like a bit of rock, so we're good.
Yeah, I am definitely a rock girl. That's for sure. For sure. Trying to, maneuver my skill set from rock into, post-modern romance and a little bit of dark wave. And it's been interesting to be able to weave that drum influence into the Night Cry. So, and they're great. My band is super patient about allowing me to try things. I think it's important to be true to your roots, because I grew up covering Pantera and Metallica and Guns N' Roses and all of the above, and the Toadies. That was like when I started first learning how to play the drums. So you pull from these different influences. But Leah, where do you get your musical influences from?
Gosh, everywhere, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's difficult because I I feel like my taste is so broad, and I think that's probably goes for everybody. So, you know, it's hard for me to choose. I'm the most indecisive person in the whole world. And I'm actually in the process right now of trying to sort of like choose a sound for this project that I'm working on. And it's so hard to be like, oh, but I really like these like theatrical, you know, style, like big things. And then I also really love the minimalist kind of industrial side. Like there's so many different directions I like to pull myself, and it's hard to find kind of where it all meets in the middle. So, love rock. I grew up listening to classic rock. My dad was like a huge, like Beatles, AC/DC, Pink Floyd, like just a lot of like really classic rock. I love Queen, but I'm also like such a pop girl. Like I love Chapel Roan. Like her whole like up, you know, coming up over the last few months has been just insane. And then of course, like growing up listening to Christina Aguilera and just a whole bunch of like kind of like, you know, girly pop. And there have been so many other like random things, you know, left field from there. So yeah, it's hard to choose, right? Like when you have to find something where you're working with other people who are working around you and those kinds of things.
I think not having to choose is really the thing too. I know you talk about Christina Aguilera or pop. We call it ear candy. It's probably the same thing you guys call it in the industry too, is that kind of tangible something that you just kind of hear and you're like, what was that? So that a lot of that ear candy you can pull from a lot of those pop acts, even, you know, of yesteryears or today. And that's, you know, those little tricks of the ear will really elevate your songs for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What would you say is your weirdest influence, or like the influence that would surprise people the most?
My influence that would surprise people the most is, well, I kind of already kind of tipped my hat to that one, is how much I'm into like the old school rock, like Metallica, but like Ride the Lightning and Pantera, like Cowboys from Hell. That stuff just, it's something, I mean, I'm getting flushed thinking about it. It's just something that taps into this primal being of mine to be aggressive, yet I like the softness of, you know, some of the things that I like to listen to, that will well round me, like, you know, influences in the way of like even classic music. I luck out my keyboardist is a classical trained pianist. So she's very, how do I describe her? She's got a lot of layers to her. She loves a lot of like rock and roll, and she'll scream like Immigrant Song in the car when we're driving to a show in Boise. But she's also taught me, without really even her knowing this, a lot of theory and how to be soft and to be melodic through your musical journey too. So, you know, I would say the real heavy duty stuff really gets me going. But I've learned how to, with my drumming, and this is something very new to me, is I actually started back into drum lessons. And I've been playing for many, 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 many years. And I said to my drum teacher, I said, I really want to find my personality. And it's been this many years of playing and performing that I really want to get back into like who I am as a drummer and how that comes through and how that looks. So thanks for that question. It does definitely get your juices flowing as to where that comes from. What about you, Michael? That's a great question.
The weirdest influence, or unexpected influence. I'm not sure really, because like you guys, I love a bit of everything. I've got a very wide musical palette. I sort of grew up when I first started taking music seriously. My awakening was Korn back in the day.
Oh, dang!
So,
I'm going
back
to see
in the day.
them in California in a couple of weeks. So.
Oh, fantastic!
Oh yeah, no,
awesome.
I want to get the sequin jumpsuit. Not to cut you off, please.
Yeah, the Adidas suit. Yeah, Korn were huge. They still are. They still sound fantastic. But yeah, that was my awakening to the darker, sort of more alternative sorts of sounds. And you know, I had this weird thing where, because particularly with metal, like I don't know if you guys found this, but it's quite in certain circles, it's not cool to expand to the more pop stuff initially. So it's like, oh, you're selling out, dude, if you're listening to that. And my circle was a little bit like that at the time. And it was the band Thrice, where I don't know if you guys are familiar with. Do you guys know Thrice?
I've heard of it, but I haven't listened much.
Okay, they started metal, and over time they got really experimental and electronic, and they started incorporating influences like Radiohead and Muse and The Cure and stuff like that. And that for me was like permission. It was like, oh, we're allowed to listen to that stuff. We're allowed to like listen to stuff outside of metal, and that just blew my mind. And I got into The Cure and all sorts of things like that. So like you guys, I love everything. But weirdest influence, I don't know, man. I quite like Acorn, classic pop like that. Well, not classic pop, but 2000s pop, 2010 pop.
So corn and acorn, I like it.
I just thought of that as you said it, Leah. Yeah, it's interesting to see too. A lot of the electronic music is coming back into the fold too. A lot of these, electronic artists that I used to listen to in like the late 90s and early 2000s are, starting to pop back up again, which is amazing. So kind of weaving that into the rock and roll genre and pop. And that's the thing. I think right now music's at a really interesting pivot. It's like, what is it? What are we listening to? Like everyone says rock is dead, but there's so many rock influences still in the fold of what we're listening to currently. But
there's a lot of merging of genres these days, which is very nice to hear.
A lot of independent artists too. So they're not married to a specific box that they have to get put into. So there's a freedom to really express yourself in the industry now, since a lot of us, if not all of us, are, independent, and we're using social media as our platform, and we're producing, and we're working with those in the field, but, we're able to really be creative in our own sense. So it's an interesting time for artists.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question for you guys, actually, if you don't mind. I was curious because you guys are both in band environments. I was curious, when you guys work on your stuff, do you prefer to work on it with the others in the room and get some immediate feedback, or do you prefer to have your own space and do it in your own time?
I can jump in. So with the Night Cry, we write in a room together. And it's pretty much the way it goes. Like we may have an idea that we come to the table with. Just for example, just a few days ago, Friday, Andreka, our lead guitarist, has been working on this riff. She's had it in her back pocket and just threw it out there, and my eyes lit up. And then Shanna, our bass player, threw a bass lick right over that, and boom, I had a cool killer drum beat to go along with it. And then Vincent, our singer, starts strumming. Hannah throws in the ear candy, and we had a song. So last Friday, we were in the studio for about 3 hours and completely wrote a whole song. So I would say for me, I'm curious to see what Leah says. It's really being in a room together. That's the magic sauce for us. It works for the Night Cry.
For us, I would say, it kind of goes either way. Like sometimes you'll be at home and something just comes to you. You know what I mean? Like I'm when I write, I'm very much like a lyricist. And so sometimes I will have pages and pages and pages of lyrics that just come out of my brain. And some days, when I'm at home, that's kind of what's going on. And then I have days where we're all together and, somebody, same thing, will have an idea and it sparks another thing. And then it slowly kind of builds up into something. I guess it kind of just depends. It's always different. I feel like every song is sort of a different process.
Great answers.
I can kind of jump in there. Even I didn't have a full band, but I had a duo that I was playing music around town, and we had one original song. And my singer at the time had these great lyrics that she wrote, and they're very personal to her. So I was trying to make sure I could justify the music to fit those lyrics. And I wasn't getting anywhere. We were both sitting in my apartment at the time, and I'm sitting there trying to come up with stuff. And I could tell she was like not feeling it, and I wasn't feeling it either. So I was like, let me work on this on my own and see if I can come up with something. And unfortunately, I didn't. I never could actually nail something. But the title of her poem for those lyrics is what we use for the title of the eventual original song. So there's still some thread in there. But I don't know if she ever turned that thing into a song herself, but I just remember we were sitting there for at least an hour in my apartment trying to make this thing work between the two of us. And I'm like, I don't, this music just sounds, it's not on the same level as your lyrics. And I can tell it's too cheesy. It's too whatever, too 80s sounding. And so I was trying to do all kinds of different things with it on my own. And I wasn't really getting anywhere. If I go way back to high school when I was in bands, then it was usually somebody coming up with something. Someone had a riff, someone had a beat, someone had something. And then depending on how we're vibing with each other, then we started throwing things on top of it, like what Sarah was talking about. And most of our original stuff was probably the best when we did that.
Yeah.
Sometimes our guitarists would come in, you know, a week later, hey, I got this great riff. And we're like, yeah, no. let's let that one percolate a little bit longer. We'll come back to it because I don't think it's ready yet. So that's kind of what also Leah said. It's kind of a little bit of both depending on what the circumstances. At least for me, I haven't done music live in, I don't know, 8 years, so it's been a long time. But back in the day, that's kind of the things I've wrestled with.
And wouldn't it be you could just bottle, like when it was just like flowing so naturally? I wish you could just bottle that, you know what I mean? And just it would be so great to be able to pull it out whenever. And sometimes it's just inspiration just doesn't flow naturally, and then sometimes it does. And it's like kind of like has to be all the things come together, the planets align for it to go as smoothly as possible. And sometimes it takes more than one session, sometimes it takes, you know, weeks, months even. I mean, it's crazy how, like I said, process wise, like it can be so different for every single song or every single project or whatever you're working on.
So Michael, being in a sense a solo artist, what about you? How does your process work?
Yeah, well, in the XRL7 stuff, because I do band stuff as well, but XRL7 stuff, yeah, it's very much on my own with an acoustic guitar, and coming up with stuff off of that. I find I like to work on the core ingredients myself. Just get the chords and the voice and the fundamentals of the song, then bring it to the various featured artists. Because if those are unfamiliar with the thing I do in XRL7, it's a animated cyberpunk series, but also a music project, and it features a ton of awesome artists, largely from the alternative rock electronic scene. And it kind of has to be on my own, really. When I first started, I did actually offer to some of the people, hey, you want to write with me? And all of them said, I prefer you just give me the song. And that was great for me because I could get it exactly the wavelength that I wanted. But the beautiful thing about working with everyone in the series, because often I will invite people that have that ear candy, have that production, that extra synth stuff going on, to contribute some extra sounds. And it's so awesome when someone comes in with something you just never would have thought of. And so it's a bit of best of both worlds, really. I like to start something in my own space, and when I give it to the others, share it, then lots of cool stuff happens. So
Great question for you guys, because as I'm thinking of this, it reminds me of like just everything that's kind of going on in the music industry right now. Have you guys kind of experimented at all with writing using AI at all to just give you like ideas of stuff? Or how are you feeling about AI coming in and like sort of not taking over, but like we've seen it take over in art and other kind of creative facets of the world? Like, how do you guys feel about, like, do you think it's a good tool? Do you think it's something that's like helpful, or do you think it's something that might be like kind of more of a detriment to us as musicians?
That's a great question. We have, myself as an artist and also with the projects that I work with have not utilized AI in the way of writing and or really grabbing, inspiration. I use it in my day-to-day. I'm very, it's very helpful for me to use in my day-to-day work. I have this odd thing about AI, and I'll share something very private with all of you. One of my favorite movies is Terminator 2.
Yes.
Extremely influential when I was growing up. It actually got me into working out. I was obsessed with Sarah Connor. So AI, as much as I love it, also freaks me the heck out. Like seriously. But going back to your question, we haven't utilized it. I mean, I know with, doing a lot of our promotional pieces, a lot of our social media content in the way of, posters and graphics and stuff. Vincent, our singer, is really good about pulling from that. He's got such a creative mindset. So we haven't tapped into it yet. But I always feel if you got to be slightly ahead of the technology, or you will be 10 steps behind if you're not. So knowing it's out there, but we haven't used it yet, but maybe.
Yeah, I haven't delved myself, but actually no, that's I have actually the other day accidentally with Chat GPT, because I use a site called Rhyme Zone sometimes. Have you guys ever dabbled with that?
No.
I think
If you're in need,
like one specific one, but I think I've come across it every now and then if I look up like things that rhyme, blah blah blah.
yeah,
that's
it's like
helpful. That's very helpful.
an online rhyming dictionary right at your fingertips. It's very handy. But I did actually use it the other day because I've got quite into Chat GPT for solving technical issues. I got a new audio interface, and you can just ask Chat GPT like these complex problems, and it has pretty good answers. So I tried it with a lyric I was struggling with, like, can you give me like 6 synonyms for this word? And it did. And I was like, they're not good. Could you give me a couple more? And it kept going through, and I saw something that was good. So in that regard, I've used it. But in regards to something like Suno, or what's the other AI site called that makes music? Suno, Udio or something?
Or what I think Suno's the one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah. I've dabbled with that recreationally, but I haven't used anything for any. I like to, I prefer to write that stuff myself. But I have had someone that someone came to me with a Suno demo, who I'm friends with, and go check out this track I'm working on. Okay, cool. And they played it to me, and it just sounded amazing. And it was, like Suno, full on track, great vocals. And he didn't tell me it was AI generated at first. He was like, yeah, it's a track I'm working on. Oh, cool. Like, how did you do that? I didn't know you could play. He goes, oh, I just did it in Suno. And he kind of had this ownership of it, even though technically he hadn't played any notes. And he tweaked some of the lyrics that he generated. And to me, as like you guys, a musician that likes to get down and dirty with, the acoustic guitar, the piano, and literally do it yourself, I kind of couldn't understand how we could claim ownership of it when he hadn't like physically done anything to it. But I definitely appreciate it as a tool to help inspiration.
I think that's a good
way
way
to
to use it as a tool. If you're stuck on a word, or a chord, and what would go with this. But that's a great question, Leah. That's got us all thinking.
Well, I definitely we love to use Suno for if we're like, oh, I need an idea for just like a direction to go or something like that. We every now and then, if I don't I play the bass. I learned the bass specifically to play in the band that I was touring with, and I can only play the songs that I learned for that. So I can kind of mess around on the piano a little bit here and there. But as far as instrumentally, I'm pretty much at a loss, so it's nice to be able to be like, oh, I just need a good guitar riff, but I don't know how to write a guitar riff, and I don't have a person for that. So the person I primarily write with is a drummer, and then I'm a singer. So we're missing that meat, in the middle. So every now and then we'll find something where we'll be like, oh, just like that chord progression or something like that, where you can listen to something sort of like when you find a song that you really like and you go, oh my gosh, I want to write something like that. So it's definitely been inspiration, things that we can use, and a tool that we can use in order to create something. And, just like anything else, it'll be completely different by the time you're done with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been sort of tapping into it here and there where we're lacking some inspiration, sort of like Splice. If you guys are familiar with Splice at all.
Oh yeah.
Splice is a great place where you can go and you can find guitar tones or loops or things like that. And it's something that sort of play, kind of goes in with the, I mean, there a lot of the time the splice ones are made by people, but I can understand what you meant, Mike, when you said like, oh, it's hard to listen to something like that and then feel like you can say, oh, I'm working on this, or this is something that I've created, because I mean, you didn't, so but it is cool to, like I said, yeah, sort of like use as a tool, like finding inspiration from something, that sort of like things where you're like, oh, I never would have thought to do that, or put those notes together, or whatever it might be. But yeah, I was like, it's something that's kind of just come up more recently, and I was like, I wonder if anybody else like dabbled in this at all.
Yeah, and the difference as well is you're contributing vocals to it, and you're sort of taking bits of it and doing your own thing to it. So it's not just like, here's a song done. There's
Right.
more creativity going in.
I don't know if I could do that. I don't know how I would feel about having it write a whole song, but I think using it as a tool, I keep going back to that, where, if you're a little stuck, or if you got a writer's block or something, or you go for a walk and you clear your mind and still it's just something's missing. Yeah. Utilizing it that way.
Yeah, something I thought of, like, the only reason I could ever see like just being like, oh, I just want to use the whole thing. A lot of streamers that aren't musicians, they're not allowed to use licensed music on streaming anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that you use for like background music or like things like that, it has to be original, or it has to be like stock, or royalty free. And so I could see people who are not musicians that just like kind of need something playing in the background, and maybe don't have the means to like hire a musician to write something for them, to just kind of have, going as background noise. I was like, that would be a really good way to utilize this tool. But yeah, as far as like creatively, it's something that, and if you mess around with it enough, it all sort of starts to kind of sound the same. So
Well, it's learning you, especially with Chat GPT, it's AI learning. So it's learning everything about you and how you are interacting with that interface, and what you're asking, and how you like a tone to be like within your, your messaging or your email. So it starts to pick up your nuances again. Terminator 2.
One cool thing about Suno, though, have you guys seen the genre wheel? They've got all these like really obscure genres you can click on, like Egyptian shoegaze or something strange like that. It's really interesting just clicking some random ones for a bit of inspiration.
Yeah, and just kind of shoving them together and seeing what happens. And sometimes it's really cool. Like sometimes you'll be like, oh, this was a mistake. But sometimes you'll just like come across some kind of sound where you're like, oh, this is actually interesting, and I never would have been able to like curate this in my own brain. But saying like, oh, I want to mix, Egyptian, like anything, you know what I mean? Just mixing things together that I don't know would have existed before something like this technology before.
Mark, you got any thought has Skynet affected you yet?
Well, when Sarah mentioned T2, I mean, I think I was in college at that time when that movie came out, so I saw it in my little podunk. Sarah would go over in Ellensburg.
Yeah.
Where I went to Central, and I remember seeing it there. And then I came over during the summer, or the other side of the mountains here, the Saddle side, and I saw it again in like a big old, like I think a Crossroads or something. And I'm like, this is how I should have saw it the first time, not in this little goofy theater, those country backwoods theater. But in terms of the AI thing, like all of you are saying, it really comes down to being like a tool. And as long as it's a tool, I think it's fine. If it starts overtaking and becoming, the thing that you're presenting to people, I have a huge problem with that. It's no different than to me as a concert photographer. If I can't actually handle my camera,
right?
You need to have this foundational piece. And if you want to use, obviously, if you're using Lightroom, using Photoshop, whatever to post process later, that's fine. It's a tool. But if you don't know what you're doing and you're in the photo pit and you had to earn that credential and you're basically, giving the middle finger to the rest of us that have taken the time to learn our craft, that's when I kind of have an issue with it. But all of us use tools. We all do. We use it for inspiration, out of curiosity, like Mike was saying, like in different genres that didn't even know exist. It's kind of cool to just kind of poke around and see what's out there. But when it comes down to your own art, regardless of what you're trying to make, to me, that foundational piece has to be hopefully organic, and then these other things are kind of sprinkled around it. But it is a little scary to me because, as I think Leah, you're talking about, you have people that aren't musicians, especially with the TikTok generation, that are just grabbing stuff everywhere so that they can get all the views, all the likes, all the followers, all that kind of thing, and they're not looking at it from an artistic sense at all. It's just something they can need. I need some music for this, so it looks like I was having fun at the beach or whatever, and they don't care at all about where it came from, just that they can access it. Just like with people stealing photos off the internet. Once things went digital, and I have that issue, that you have a watermark, they can take a watermark off of that. And I'll have something show up, I'm like, where the hell did that, how did it end up there? And who is this? And sometimes they don't mean, they don't have bad intentions, but sometimes they just don't think anything of it. They don't think about trying to, someone actually owns the copyright to this, and you just took it. So you try to politely educate them. And sometimes that works, and sometimes they get completely butthurt, because I've had both incidents happen to me about, look, I understand that you took this image and you used it. They try to change it for some other reason, did some Photoshop to it. And I said, that's something that I own, and you can't do that just because you could find it through a Google image search. And again, you're trying to educate people. Most of the time they'll have a good react. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize it. I'll take it immediately down. But then sometimes you get these other people that are like, F you, I don't care. I'm going to keep it up. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But again, we clearly don't think that way. We're artistic people, so we know where that's coming from. We don't want to have someone to do that to somebody else that's also trying to create art in some way, shape, or form. But it's definitely going to keep increasing. There's no getting around AI. Just kind of it's infiltrating. I know there's been a lot of talk about album covers lately and backlash with, oh, you use AI for your album cover. Why didn't you hire an artist to actually make that instead of just having these different, 2,000 images put together into a computer algorithm and have it spit out something? And the art looks kind of cool, but if it's stealing from some art that already existed, that's where the issue, comes into. Hollywood had that issue when they went on strike, taking my image and using it 10 years down the road. So, oh, you already signed off on the contract in 2024. It doesn't matter if it's 2034 now. We can still use it. That's scary. That's really scary to me.
Mm.
Well, that's the challenge, is that you talk about photography. Think about like when, we started getting the Samsung cameras and the iPhones and the cameras that were the capabilities of even just having something in your palm. And I have a lot of photographers in the industry that were looking at it the same way as musicians were looking at AI. It's like, wow, there's this really powerful tool. You can take a photo. If you know a little bit about, Photoshop or light work, you can edit those photos to be just as good as my, $10,000 camera that I've invested in over time for my own craft. And now we're seeing it with music and Hollywood. That's another big one is, our friends that are in the Hollywood industry, like how that's going to start to affect it. So I think at some point there'll be a leveling off where we will kind of rise against the machine, if you will, and really kind of come back to the roots of who we are as artists, whether it's photographers, musicians, actors, everything. So I think it's the new fun thing to play with, and there's a great aspect to it. But at some point, everything starts to come back around again to center, and we kind of scratch our heads and say, okay, how can we embrace this without it being detrimental to our futures as artists?
Yeah. And then so left field, but like still sort of like attached to this conversation. Terminator 2 was like so much better than Terminator 1. Like it's so funny how like normally I feel like sequels are like awful, but that movie was so good. Like I don't even remember much about the first Terminator movie, but I could watch Terminator 2 any day of the week. It's so good.
I just watched it literally like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was talking so much about it with a friend. I was like, I got to put this thing on and watch it. And it's still frightening. Robert Patrick's character, it's still to this day sends chills up my spine when he has the metal hands that just come out. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, it's so good though. Yeah, we watched it recently as well, and I remember thinking like it doesn't feel that far like off from where we are to think about like, oh, there will be, imagine Alexa gets like a super crazy makeover. It's like, I mean, someday, who knows what might happen.
I think that Arnold Schwarzenegger's character came back from the year 2029.
All right.
I think
Well,
John Connor sent him back from 2029. If you watch like the first opening scene again, because I just watched it, I think that's what it said on the screen. I was like, ooh.
that's so wild. And it's so funny that like back when they made that movie, they were like, that's so far into the future.
Yep.
They're going to have this crazy technology. And I mean, some of the technology we have is crazy, but then also like, you know, we have this like pocket computer and we use it to watch videos of cats. You know what I mean? Like the power of the world is at our fingertips, and we're like, you know what I'd really like to do right now is watch somebody like crush soap in their hand on YouTube.
That's where it's coming back all the way around again to the simplicity of our brains, right? We want to just watch crushing soap.
Yeah.
Not
I just
solve the
want
world's
to
problems.
crush soap without actually having to do it myself.
Right.
Yeah, that reminds me of pre-show when I was asking Mike about the jacket potatoes and those videos I've been watching. I just find it relaxing and just kind of interesting. That makes me hungry when I watch it.
So here's a fun question. This is tapping into something fun. What odd videos do we like to watch at night?
Ooh.
Specifically at night.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be during the day, but I feel like when you're kind of what they call doom scrolling or relaxing your brain and you're just scrolling through, what is your algorithm right now feeding?
Ooh. I definitely have fallen into like the soap crushing, the soap cutting,
Yeah.
where they take a bar of soap and they cut like a grid into it, or like burn, I don't know how they do it. And then they take a knife and they like slice it down, and it's just like these little cubes of tiny little pieces of soap, and it's just crumbling down. I don't know why it's so satisfying.
So that's
But yeah, it's like I could fall asleep just watching it.
Yeah. Mine has been hair cutting videos.
Oh, see, I do that. That's like my day job.
Yes, I know this. I don't know what it is. I don't know anything about cutting hair. I have a fantastic hair artist that I get to have him work on my head, which is amazing. But it's hair cutting videos. I don't know how or why. And I watch them from beginning to end, and everything from like, the barber shop and these wild hairstyles that they do all the way to, these asymmetrical bob cuts. So yeah, it's been hair cutting videos for me. That's been my relaxation, algorithm scroll.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's on YouTube, not so much, but on Facebook, it's just animal videos. Just like animals doing like weird stuff or weird tricks, or just like animal rescues other animal out of a swimming pool or something like that. Because you know how the algorithm works on Facebook. You look at something just for it times how long you look at something. So if you just look at something for a little bit, a few extra seconds, you just get loads of those videos. So yeah, I get a lot of animal videos. Yeah, strangely.
What about you, Mark?
So besides the jacket potato guy in the UK, there's a period of time in the summer I was watching this guy that does hot dogs in New Jersey. He's got his, his brick and mortar, and he's got his food truck, and it's got the camera, mounted here, so you just see him making these hot dog orders. I don't know. Somehow it's relaxing to me.
Korean street food videos, which I feel like must be some kind like similar, where you watch. It's like you're watching somebody prepare something, and it feels so simple, but somehow it's more complicated. I don't even know, but yeah, like there's something so like satisfying and calming about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking earlier, I can find that I've passed over an hour watching these little 3-minute videos.
Again, like Leah said, going back to, we're watching cat videos instead of solving the world's problems, but sometimes you need soap videos and potato videos and hair cutting videos.
Yeah. I've also been watching a lot of stand-up comedy at night.
Yes.
I interviewed a comedian like 2 months ago, so it kind of got me on this stand-up comedy kick. So I just started exploring new people that I didn't even know who they were. And if they were kind of finding them great, I watched it. If they weren't, I moved to the next one. And laughter relaxes everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you smile, it physically relaxes you. Yeah. So that's always kind of like a good thing to kind of send me off into Never Land. See if there was something else. Oh, well, and this isn't too far-fetched, but this is actually how I met Leah back in 2020, is that sometimes I'll be in the mood, not all the time, but sometimes I'll want to either like check out like a cover version of a song, just a random song. So I just kind of sit there and look at YouTube and say who's done some of these things, watch a couple minutes or maybe even 30 seconds of something. And if it catches my interest, then I continue watching it. And that was her, because I was Phantom of the Opera when she was doing the music of the night. And that was completely random.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's the backstory, folks. If you didn't know how I first met Leah, it's because of YouTube and her putting up this cover from, I don't know how many years ago that was, maybe 6 at this point.
I remember
4.
how it feels like forever ago and yesterday all at the same time, but that's just like
Yeah. And we ended up getting connected through Facebook, I remember. And she did a written interview, because this is during the pandemic, everyone. And then the Alice opportunity came for me to do these live stream things. And then she came on and did that the first chapter, and then again came back for the fun tables and some other one-on-ones. But yeah, and there was one I was just trying to watch. Oh, it was a cover of maybe like a Def Leppard song. I was trying to see what kind of full band covers, not like a guitar cover. I wanted to see a full band do it. And most of them, I didn't find any that kind of did much for me, but that's, there could have been one, I just missed it. But yeah, every now and then, between the comedy, between the potatoes, I will try to find a cover song that kind of is like, oh, this is kind of cool. That's one of the things I do love about like YouTube and some social media, that I've been connected to things I never would have been connected to at all, including Leah. I mean, I would have never known over in Ohio, there's this woman with an amazing voice. And then here we are, 4 years later.
Well, it's great too, because it's connected, the three of us too as artists. And, you never know when we're touring in Ohio and hit up Leah and, maybe collaborate on a show together, or with Michael, his brain and what he creates, thinking about our music and his artistry. And it's great. I mean, this is why, Mark, you're important in the industry, is these connections. We've said it before in past interviews. It's your love for just being curious about artists in the industry, all different types of artists, because you interview a slew of them from all different versions. And it's inspiring to us too, to be able to, see what you do and connect all of us together. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been, I think, Sarah, may have been you talking about being kind of curious about people.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely me. And so I could be watching, an independent film when the film overall maybe isn't so great, but there's someone's performance and they're like, who is this person? I'm just really interested. I'd like to know more. So then I do my due diligence and try to figure out a way to maybe talk to them. I'm glad I have that piece to me, because more than half the guests I've ever interviewed probably wouldn't have come across my purview if it was left to the publicists and the managers and those kind of people getting a hold of me. Sure. It was me trying to find them. I said, this is really cool. So like, again, I reached out to Leah. I believe Andreka reached out to me about your band, and then Mike, you probably reached out to me because of Alice, is my guess, over a year ago, I think. Again, I can't remember things from yesterday, but so it's a little bit of all of it. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. I can provide a platform for people, and you can ask anybody that knew me back in junior high. I loved finding like the band that nobody knew about. The up and coming one that had a demo tape, or was just going to do a local gig somewhere, and there was something about them. So, man, you got to check them out. They're probably going to get big or something. And that's carried me all the way into me being 54 now, that I'll watch somebody, see a film, hear a song, read something that was really well done by an author. And it's like, I don't care where you are in the scope of quote unquote success. If there's something interesting about you, I want to talk to you. That's what I look at. So everyone has a fair shot. It's the way I look at it. And I'm always flattered when people reach out to me about, hey, we'd love to do something with you. Because I don't look at myself like that. I'm like the same old ding dong, kid that was going to shows wearing my biker jacket and my ripped jeans. I don't think of myself as how some other people kind of look at me. But when people want selfies with me at shows, it's weird. I just like, why do you want a picture with me? Oh, but I watch your live streams. I saw that one interview you did with so-and-so. And so they think I'm somehow connected to that artist directly. I said, well, I don't have them, on my phone. I can't sit there and just text so-and-so. But I appreciate what you're saying. I'll take a million selfies with you if you want, but it's just weird to me. And
embrace the weird. It's well-deserved.
Well, again, I appreciate it. And I want to see we have Judo JD joined us. Andreka is with us. Hi, Andreka. Shauna Fairchild's with us right now. So again, if anybody in there has questions for the group, throw them in there as we're chit-chatting away. We'd love to have your questions and Doesn't matter how far-fetched they are. We're talking about potatoes and haircutting videos and soap.
Exactly.
It's for the most part fair game.
I'd
Do you
say.
guys like? I was going to say, do you guys like? Because years ago, the cool thing about social media and that we can all connect now. I remember back in the day before social media was a thing, you'd get a band, you get a CD, and there was this mystique to an artist, and there was so limited information you could find out about them unless they were like a big pop star or something.
Sure.
So the alternative bands and the rock, more obscure bands, you kind of had to use your imagination a bit. And now everyone's so connected. You could send a DM to like Billy Corgan. You might not reply, but you might. You never know. But it's a very interconnected world now, and I think that's really cool.
It
But
is.
also,
Yeah, I just thought that's an interesting point to think about how to still maintain that as an entertainer. We have a character, if you will. We show up on the stage or on social media as a character, but I think what has connected us even more is the ability to just be yourself too on social media, and then to be able to see the day-to-day of what you do, which, I mean, that's a great point, Michael, is that we didn't really have access to that growing up. And they always say don't meet your heroes, but it's a really different platform now, to be able to connect with your favorite artists of the day, today and tomorrow. And I think you have to then really be mindful about how you're showing up in every day, right? Like, Mark, you're getting people asking for selfies. It's, we're all out there now and we're recognized. And I think it's a gift. It's not to be taken lightly, but it's a great point. I was laughing. I follow Vivian Campbell from Def Leppard, and he was following one of my stories. I'm like, this is bananas. Like, love him. He's one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite guitarists. And I'm like, is this really a thing? Like, again, you mentioned messaging Billy Corgan. I would see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree, Michael. It's a really interesting point because I was talking to someone probably a couple of years ago about if I could have, back in the 80s, somehow connected with Steve Harris of Iron Maiden, I would have flipped my brain of like, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
But nowadays, maybe they see it, maybe they don't, but there's this avenue that you can still use that we never had before. And even for me, I've been able to connect directly with some artists that I was listening to, and I'm just so surprised when it's not their manager, it's actually them getting back to me. And I'm like, whoa, that fanboy comes out. This is so cool that I'm sending messages with so-and-so, and we're trying to set up like when they're coming to town about doing something in person or doing something virtual. Yeah, and I think for the younger generation, they're just used to it. They have nothing to compare it to because they don't know that before time when, yeah, like you're saying, if you bought an album, a cassette, or eventually a CD or something else, it was like this big deal. And then that's kind of what you had. And then you had magazines to kind of gain information. So like if there's your favorite band's going on tour, you didn't see what the set looked like, or the set list or the design of the stage unless someone put a picture in a magazine or a newspaper. Now it's like immediately you're going to YouTube trying to look at the opening night video and you can see what they're doing for the stage set. Here's the set list and wow, someone's live streaming from it. It's so different. It's so immediate. So there's pluses and minuses to, both ways, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the internet and like how far it's come is also like how available everybody is all the time. And in a lot of ways that is really cool because you're like a thread away from somebody that you might really admire, but also you have to think about that person is a thread away from everyone that admires them. And so you have these people who are like readily available sort of to like everyone in the world, and they've got millions of people that want to talk to them every day. And I can't imagine like how overwhelming it must be to be on the other side of it where you're like, oh my gosh. Well, and for me as somebody who I struggle a lot with people pleasing, and I'd be like, I have to answer all of these messages.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a lot of people that struggle with that, and the ability to kind of disconnect and not feel guilty about it, or to disconnect in a way that's still being respectful. I know that Chapel Rowan, somebody that I mentioned earlier also, there was like a big stink maybe like a month ago, maybe only a couple of weeks ago, where like people would come up to her in public and be like, I really want a photo with you. And she'd be like, I'm at the grocery store and I'm just trying to buy potatoes.
Mm.
And, you know, it was like something where she had to like make an announcement like, hi, like I'm a person, don't forget that, you know. And it's nice that people have the ability to be a human and be relatable in a lot of ways, but that's another way that I think is so important, is like you can be relatable and be like, yeah, I'm a person just like you, so I do X, Y, and Z, but also like, hey, I'm a person just like you, so I also need X, Y, and Z. So it's wild, yeah, how accessible we're, I don't know if the word expected is like the right word, but like expected to be, you know, as people who maybe inspire others or people are interested in what we're doing. It's like it's kind of wild to be like, oh, somebody could just message you and they might not know if you'll respond or not or whatever, but like, yeah, there is a person on the other side of that, which is just so wild. Whereas, yeah, before it was like, oh, you want to know something about your favorite artist? Like, you have to go and buy this copy of the Rolling Stone where they did that interview and talked about that thing. Um, so it's really crazy how like quickly and how um, extreme it's become, sort of like the accessibility to people that are just like our heroes and our inspirations.
Yeah, I saw that announcement that Chapel did, Leah, the whole thing to her fan base. And yeah, some people too, you know, just as individuals, they could be struggling with depression or anxiety or other kind of things that are very real to them. And then in her case, she shot up so quickly that it's kind of like, now you got all these people wanting stuff from you.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to be rude to them, but at the same time, no, I'm trying to just kind of exist right now. I'm trying to make this work for my career. I would love to take the time with you, but I just don't have it. If you're taking too much out of me, then I can't do what I want to do, which is ultimately the goal of being an artist. So it's got to be hard for her to put something out there like that, but also, and I've seen this unfortunately, especially from the media side when I'm at concerts or other events, the entitlement that happens from fans of all ages, not just young fans. Mm-hmm. They think that because I bought a ticket, that means you're going to give me a selfie, you're going to give me an autograph, you're going to give me some of your time. It's like, no, you paid for a ticket. What you're entitled to is a really great show from that stage. Everything else is a bonus. So don't expect that you get that. A lot of times artists do those things, of course, but they shouldn't be required to do it. And I think that's the difference I've seen with some people. I mean, they get really, really pushy. Come to the merch table. Hey, I really want to get a picture with you. And they're like, you know, the artist is talking to somebody else and trying to be polite about it. Say, I'll get to you in a second or whatever. No, I want to take the picture right now. I'm like, dude, just wait. Or maybe they're just going to tell you to get the F out of here. And it doesn't matter if it's music. I've seen it with at the ballet of all places. I've seen it in other places where like, I didn't think I would see this here, but they want, it's all I. And it's just like, wait a minute, you're here to enjoy the show, whatever this show is. And if you get something as a bonus, that's what it is. But you can't go around thinking, where is she? She's in my background here. There's a huge young crowd for Leah, who's just gone zonkers with her fan base. So most of her fan base is probably like high school age, maybe college age. And I just don't know how many times I've seen people posting online about, how do I meet her? I want this, I want that. Because they saw I got a picture with her. It was completely a fluke that I got a picture with her. She came to her merch trailer outside the Paramount Theater here in Seattle on a whim. She decided to just come out there and meet a few fans for like 15 minutes, and she went backstage. I just happened to be there at the right time. If I'd shown up 15 minutes later, I would have missed out on the opportunity too. It was quick. You got to say hi, have her sign something. I had her personalize mine to Mark, and so she made some crack about my name as a meme or something, the K versus the C thing, which was actually kind of funny. And then her tour manager took a picture, and then I was out of there. So I had no special powers. I didn't have, pulling well, I'm a media person, so I'm going to go and meet Leah. Like, no, I was just like any other fan. I just happened to show up, and the people that were sitting next to me who were young, they were like, she said something from the stage about how I got to meet a bunch of you, earlier today. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know you were going to be here. She didn't announce it. She just came out. And then I happened to be, well, me being kind of the dick that I am sometimes, I said, oh, I happen to be here. So I showed the picture on my phone. They're like, oh my God, they're just freaking out about this picture. And they asked me all these questions. And just like I just talked about right now, there was no method there was no, pulling this little favor to get something. I said, that could have been you. And I would have been the one going, oh my God, you got a picture with her. Now, it could have been anybody. But there's definitely an entitlement thing going on when it comes to, I would say, probably conscious more than anything.
Mm.
And
It's funny you say that, because I was thinking the word entitlement before you said it, but I talked myself out of saying it because I thought that's a bit of a mean word. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I've observed that as well, especially with even some of the mid-range artists. People go to shows, or there's this expectation, as you said. It's a very sort of self me. What can you do for me, sort of thing. And yeah, I've observed that too, Mark.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And Leah, you were just on tour, quite a long tour with Glasslands, and I don't know if you encountered any of that kind of thing where people want to get a picture with you after the show, or just how the tour went in general for you, because that wasn't something you had toured with your other bands in the past. I know, and played Warped Tour and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
I didn't know. Did you kind of find any of that kind of stuff after your set?
I wouldn't say entitlement, but one thing that I will say is, like, just a girl in the music industry, and I would imagine that Sarah probably experiences this as well, is that, you'll take a group photo and then all of a sudden there's always that one guy that goes, "Can I just get a photo with you?" And I'm like, I'm not even a big deal in this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, there's weird, I don't know, undertones to it, and you feel bad being like, no. But yeah.
You have to look out for yourself as well. We have this saying in our band, like, protect the band at all costs. And also, I will second to that, is protect the brand, because both of those are one and the same. We're constantly out there, all of us as artists. And I know my pregame routine, there's a lot of meditation that comes along with it. I might necessarily not be very social prior to the performance, because I'm really trying to be mindful of what I give in my performance to not only our fans, but also my band. There has to be that chemistry on stage. So if I'm a little quiet or maybe not as approachable, I just want to put that out there. I love and care. I mean, our mission statement is to include, inspire, through music and inclusion, one experience at a time. And we're really, really good at connecting. So you have to also be mindful as to how you show up for your fans after the show, after the performance. You can take all the pictures you want, have all the conversations, but we all have that tipping point where we have to be careful about not giving too much, and not giving too little either. So there's a balance. I feel like we could have a whole hour and a half conversation on mindfulness as being artists and protecting yourself and your mental well-being and communicating. If you're a solo artist, who are you leaning on? And if you are in a band, kind of the things to look out for each other. So really important topic. We could, like I said, have a whole conversation about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of, even with my duo, that depending on the size of the crowd that was showing up and we're playing breweries, coffee houses, things of that nature. So they should be pretty casual. But for my singer at the time, it was overwhelming. So if she saw 3 or 4 people, hey, no problem. She felt pretty good. But if she saw the room fill up before we got going with our set, then she needed some time away. And I always gave her as much time as she needed to find that happy space, kind of get her zone going. And so people would ask me, hey, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? I was like, oh, she's just getting ready for the show, is what I would say. And then once she got on, did our stuff, she was fine. But I could always tell that look in her eye that she just saw bodies. It's like, that was fine, because I understood it. And I mean, my role is to get out there and talk to the people then before we start doing our thing.
Yeah, it's important to know your bandmates and communicate with them and have those regular conversations too. And we all fill our cups differently. Some of us need to be in our own headspace and quiet and meditating and then give it your all. And some of us fill our cups by being with the fans prior to the show. I know our singer, Vincent Varney, that's what gets him going, is being with the fans beforehand. And that he brings that to the stage. So it's just this knowing what each other needs and wants before we perform and after. So.
Yeah, so this is a good tip for all the fans out there of any band that you're watching, any performer, that don't assume that one is like all the others, even if they're in the same band. So if you see them standing in the club before the show or something, maybe they're approachable, maybe they're not trying to be non-approachable. They're trying to get into their zone so they can give you the best performance.
And something you were saying as well, Sarah, about how we play, we all put on a bit of a character when we go on stage or when we perform in some way. I think that's why in what I do, so many musicians are great at voice acting, because it's kind of part of what you do. You do a sort of performance with the music. But certainly I've seen, not with my bands, but with other bands, that bands have been quite surprised when they speak to the artist off stage, because there's a lot of people that are very huge on stage but are very sort of reserved and quiet, like behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're creating your character, and part of that is very genuine to who you are. It's in there, right? And how you show up. I mean, it could be with, outfits or matching, or your makeup or your hair or your everything from lighting too. Lighting can really affect your performance as well. So dialing that in. Yeah. And it's going back to the social media, and then you see us, in regular clothes and hanging out, and we're with our pets and our friends and at the grocery store. So it's really unique.
Do you guys have any pre-performance rituals to kind of get into the zone?
Definitely. I have a great meditation that was actually shared with me by Andreka, who's my lead guitarist. She's on today. It's been a game changer for me. It's 10 minutes. I do it, if there's a green room, I can do that. Sometimes I'm even able to do it at home before I kind of embark on getting ready for the show. And it just puts your head in the correct space. That's been great. Also vocal warm-ups. I do that along with my my partner in crime, Hannah. Her and I do all the female harmonies for the Night Cry. And we also have encouraged the rest of our bandmates to get involved as well. And one of the biggest things that we do, and when you do come see the Night Cry, you will learn this, is that we always do a team cheer before we get on stage, no matter where we are. And we make it loud. And people are like, were you guys just doing a cheer backstage? So I'm a former cheerleader, so I like to bring that energy, and we loosen it up, and we yell and we clap, and it really gets us going. And as soon as we're on stage, it's like this instant connection. So something so simple like that.
Yeah.
I haven't performed live in a few years now. We're actually looking at something again now, but even going on live streams and back then, tapping into what you were saying about meditation, I do kind of a deep breathing thing where sort of I breathe slower, just take my time, because it slows you down, stops you getting too stressed and amped up, and you can really be in the moment.
Yeah.
Leah?
I would say this tour that I went on a couple of months back, it was different for me to be playing an instrument, because I had to sort of have a different routine. Normally, being a vocalist, I would be doing vocal warm-ups and things like that, but because it was backing vocals and playing with an instrument, I was less, I guess I have less time that I've spent, mastering it. I would run through the songs and just kind of go over the parts that I knew that I needed to in that time and place, just to remind myself, I've got this, you've done this before. But I think just even especially in a band setting, just everybody being together kind of before this, walking on stage and having that moment of kind of hyping each other up, and sort of similar to with what Sarah was saying, is just it's almost if you can have everybody sort of be part of it, it makes it such a it makes such a difference to kind of get on stage after you were just hyping each other up, versus if everybody's kind of doing their own thing, versus if everybody's doing their thing together. I think that makes all the difference in the world, really. So it's nice to kind of hone in and know okay, this is what we're doing. We're doing this together. We're all part of it, and we're all worried about our individual pieces, parts, but also the performance as a whole and us as a whole.
I guess I should say a few things. The only thing I remember about when I was playing live was that I guess I'm probably a little bit like what Sarah was saying with her singer Vincent, that I viewed it as I'm the host. So if I see people that I know, I'm trying to go around. So if it's my parents, if it's a friend, it's a coworker, somebody, hey, thanks for coming, glad to see you. You know, that beer, number 7 is really good or whatever. If I already know their preferences, that kind of stuff. And then mentally in my head, before we're playing, I'm kind of a worrywart, so we're always trying to get to the location early. I want to get everything technically as sound as possible because it's it's a lot of work just to get these kind of gigs together. Even like getting this live stream together, I don't want to have something happen that I could have prevented technically. And you can't prevent everything, of course. But sometimes if I have the opportunity, yeah, Mark, you can set up whenever. Okay, we're gonna get there pretty early, so then I can kind of relax. Know everything's good. We've already done a sound check. People are rolling in. I can go be social with them, and then in my head, I'll try to pump myself up. And usually if my singer's in the same mindset, we're talking about, let's go have fun. This is supposed to be fun for us. Doesn't matter if we're getting paid, if we're not, if we're not having fun, why are we doing this? So let's get out there and have fun with it. If we make mistakes, we make mistakes. And that usually help me. I'll think a little bit about like the Rocky theme or Eye of the Tiger or some other kind of things kind of go in my head a little bit. Like, yeah, we're going to get out there. We're going to kill this and have fun doing it. And for the most part, I can't really think of too many gigs that we had that, or maybe any gigs that were just like, oh, that one wasn't very good. They're either good or they're great. But I think it was our approach to them that we had the right mindset of like, yeah, this is going to be fun, and we're working on these songs, and here's a set list, and we're going to put these new ones in there, and let's just go see what sticks. We didn't have any higher expectations that we weren't trying to make a career out of this. We both knew it. So it's like we have day jobs, so this is our fun job. Let's go have fun.
What you're saying about mindset there, Mark, it reminded me in one of my old bands a few years ago, many years ago. I remember like that we had this show, and for whatever reason, I just wasn't feeling it. I kind of checked out. So I was kind of doing it almost not like a robot, but you kind of just check out. I was doing it. And I was thinking, I'll get it the next show. We'll get it the next show. It's fine. And what happened after that show is the drummer left the band, and we did end up getting another drummer. But I thought in that moment, oh man, I should really be in the moment every single time, every show, because you never know if you're actually going to play again or what's going to happen with the band or what's going to go on. So the mindset thing, I think that's a really important point, to go there and have fun and really embrace the moment every time.
Yeah, 100%. I've been in a situation where my very first band, my last show, I didn't know it was my last show. And I feel like I've told this story maybe on one of our sessions in the past, but yeah, you just never know when it could be the last time. So you have to make the best of it, because it could be the last time, whether it's something that is like sudden and unexpected, or whether it's something that's been building up for a long time. And you have to kind of make each moment memorable, because you just never know when it could be the last time you're performing with one of your bandmates, or that you're performing in that band, or whatever it might be. And sometimes it's easy to get caught up in other things that are going on. I remember my last show with that band, there were so many things going through my mind, and there were so many things happening in my life at that moment, that now I look back and I'm like, I don't even remember most of that show and that performance. And I wish that I had put a little bit more of myself and my presence in that performance.
Yeah, I think we all have one of those performances. It could be one, it could be a few that you just like, gosh, could have done that or approached that differently. And I think as artists, we tend to really deep dive into all the things that we didn't do versus what we did do. So I think, Michael, that's a great way. It's just your mindset. And we hear it all the time, not to be cliche, and I don't find it to be cliche. It was really knowing your why. Like, why are you doing this? Because it's a whole day of travel and setting up your gear and breaking it down and performing. And it's not like a couple hours. This is, sometimes, in Leah's case, this is on tour. For us, it's, getting in a car and driving 3 states away to do what we do. It's knowing your why, even for that 45 minutes that you're on the stage, and nothing else matters.
Yeah, and I can have what Leah was talking about, and Michael as well, where you don't never know when it's your last show, I had both sides of that. So the last time I performed live, it wasn't intentionally that was going to be our last show. It just kind of, I think other things came into our lives, and I know my media outlets started to really kind of take off, so I was spending more time on that instead of trying to do our music duo. But then on the flip side, my previous music duo, we kind of had a falling out, and we still had a gig to do. And talk about awkward. So we knew that was the last show, and I wasn't telling anybody, but we tried to just, be professional and honor our commitment. But we were probably as far away from each other on that stage as possible when we weren't interacting with each other, or when we do our normal banter between songs. There was none of that. It was like, get through the show, grab your gear, and then we're just going to go our separate ways. And so that was a really odd situation to be in.
Yeah. Bringing it back to Terminator, the circling right back to Terminator 2. You guys know the music connection trivia of that one, right? The T-1000 is his brother is the actor who plays the T-1000. His brother is the singer of Filter.
Yes.
He's pretty dope, isn't it? That's insane.
Yes. That's very cool. Yeah, he known for Hey Man, Nice Shot. Yeah, they definitely are brothers. I just brought that up in musical trivia for fun. It's a good one.
Yeah, I love it too. I love these little connections here and there.
Me too.
And just letting anybody know that's watching this live, we've got about maybe 8 or 9 minutes. If you do have a question or comment, throw it into the chat on YouTube or Twitch.
Yes,
and then I'll ask it to the group. Otherwise, we're going to just keep rambling for the next 8 or 9 minutes before we wrap this up. Well, actually, let's kind of do this now so that we don't run out of time. We'll kind of go around with all three of you. What do you have coming up? Is there anything that you want to promote or talk about? And we'll just start with Leah.
At the moment, not really. Working on things behind the scenes, and my podcast. We have season 3 that's going to be hopefully beginning to at least get like underway with filming and recording in the next couple of weeks here. So, and then musically, just in the studio at the moment. So not a lot of like releasing things, but there are things happening. So yeah, which is not always the most exciting thing, but it'll be exciting to kind of get them underway and starting to make creative like steps in those directions. So I'm excited for both of those things. And yeah, just chopping people's hair off so that Sarah can watch it at night while she falls asleep.
Real quickly, what is your podcast about for people that aren't familiar with it?
So the podcast is called Honestly Same, and we talk about life. We talk about a lot of different subjects and just things that I think a lot of people can relate to, and a lot of things that people go through where, in the moment you're kind of like, this feels so isolating, but then later, if you're talking about it with a group, you realize like, oh, other people kind of experience this stuff too. So tackling a lot of different subjects like family, parenthood, marriage, relationships, moving, jobs. Like there's a lot of things that as we sort of, come across things in life, we sort of throw them into the mix as well. And then we also have episodes as well that are a little bit more, well, a little less structured, I guess I could say, where we'll like play a game where we'll answer questions from a card game, like We're Not Really Strangers, or I can't remember what, we got a different game that was something a little bit similar but different, where we kind of jump into all different just kind of like life situations, and it's been really fun. So this season, I'm not even 100% sure like what all it's going to be about, but it's kind of just everything and anything.
Okay, well, there you go. And it's called Honestly Same, correct?
Yes, Honestly Same.
All right, folks. And we'll go over to Sarah.
Great. So the Night Cry is wrapping up. We had a goal to hit 20 shows in 2024. We hit the goal. We have a special, thank you. We have a special show coming up at Ray's Golden Lion in Richland, Washington. And I'm not going to spoil any secrets, but the Night Cry's got something really cool up their sleeve for that performance. It's just a one-night thing for Halloween. And then we finish up with our last show. We have our international show in November. And then we're kind of locking it down, much like Leah. We're in the studio. We are going to finish up and wrap our album. Our goal is to have that done by early spring of 2025. So everything is there. The groundwork is laid. Just a matter of getting us in the room and knocking this out. We're really excited for it. And then leading into 2025, I can't let anybody know just yet, but Andreka and I, as well as the Nightcry, are working on a very special project and an event that will really be one of our biggest PR pushes. And it's not just going to involve the Nightcry, but our community of artists and creatives and everybody that we work along with. So that's going to be upcoming probably around April 2025, and we'll let everybody know about it. So, and then just personally still knocking things out of the park with some other musical projects. So I'm keeping really active, playing and, you know, doing my muggle job, and really happy to be a part of this, Mark. Really thank you for everything that you do for us.
Awesome. And you're one of your other musical bands that you're a part of. Didn't you just play or have been playing during the summer? Is it Hairstorm? No, it's Hair.
Yeah, yeah. So talk about Def Leppard. I mean, I have an infatuation for 80s hair metal. So I have the opportunity to play with a band called Hairstorm. And it's all arena rock. It's covers, and we have a ton of fun. I believe my guitarist Primo is actually joining us. So if he is, awesome. Yeah, that's just kind of scratches that 80s hair metal itch, and I get to be the character. And I'm so thankful. Between all of my music projects, I have such talented musicians I've gotten to work with and collaborate with. I mean, my heart is full. So thank you to all of them for being a part of that.
That's awesome. And then we'll go up to Mike.
Well, I am working on the new episode of XRO7 and new single, and you would be delighted to hear it is a collaboration with the band Alice. So that's going to be very exciting. Yeah, just chugging away, you know, working on the animation. There's going to be some new music with my previous band called Mixy One. There's a single we're working on, and the next XRO7 song I'm working on as well. We're looking at doing something special for that, potentially doing some sort of pseudo live stuff, like recording a live session. So it's busy times. It's really just a lot of me sitting at my graphics tablet and doing frame by frame. So yeah, and it was really awesome to meet all of you guys tonight. And Mark, you're fabulous.
Well, thank you. And again, for people, go to XRL7 on YouTube. You can see all the episodes that Mike's talking about of his animated series. And the most recent one, if you can catch it, you'll hear my voice in it, because I was one of the characters, real small character. But it was awesome to be a part of that. And then, yeah, to hear that you're collaborating with Alice on the next song for the next episode is going to be obviously extra special to me, since I've got that connection to that band. And who knows what the future holds, because maybe you have two talented people right here that you got a chance to meet and hang out with for an hour and a half, that they're musically inclined and maybe even vocally inclined in terms of voiceover stuff. I mean, Sarah's very intelligent in how she speaks, because I was doing all the voiceovers back at the audio engineer company, and Leah's got all kinds of personality. So if you find a reason that maybe they'd want to jump on and do that kind of thing too, obviously no pressure. I'm not saying do it, but you know, there's people there.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Yeah. So Sarah, Mike, Leah, thank you for joining me. People in the chat or watching or listening or both, thank you for being there. If you're watching this down the road, thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I hope to do another one of these hopefully before this year is out. It just, again, depends on schedules. But I so enjoyed today. It's so nice when I can just kind of disappear back here. Very different than doing one-on-one interviews, but I so enjoyed you. So thank you so much for taking the time. Mike, good night to you. Leah, it's still evening. Sarah and I, it's afternoon. So everybody just kind of enjoy the rest of your day, whatever's left of it.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.